It is now July 1st, and that means NBA free agency is underway. And the superstar carousel is spinning round and round and round. I'm going to talk about a few trades that I didn't get to in my last video, but obviously Giannis to the Heat, LaMelo to the Timberwolves, Ja Morant to Portland, and then Kawhi back to Toronto. And of course, what the heck is going on with LeBron? He's not coming back to LA. All that plus some key free agent signings, all that and a little bit more on this episode of Oh Brother the Podcast. And I am, of course, your host, Coop. Let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. The free agency carousel is spinning around and around. And first things kicked off with a major trade that we haven't talked about that happened late last week. And that is obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, heading down to South Beach, Miami to team up with Bam Adebayo. This trade is looking like, well, first for Milwaukee, it's going to be somewhat of a complete rebuild for them moving forward. Obviously, they couldn't make it work with Giannis in his later years, pretty much holding them captive to either an extension or try harder to get some better players around them. They couldn't do so. At least they weren't productive with the guys they brought in, Miles Turner, Kuzma, and such. Just didn't pan out for those guys. And then obviously Giannis had some health issues last year, playing less than half the season. So it was time for both sides to move on. And the next step is moving him to Miami, who has been a play-in team for the majority of the last half of decade. They did make the finals in 20 and 22 under the tutelage of Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra, but they've been pretty mediocre and below average since then. Bam Adebayo's been an all-NBA defensive type player. Tyler Hero was your 20-plus point scorer, shooter, and you had some solid players around him, but you take away the future Hall of Fame head coach and Eric Spoelstra, and this team is probably a close to, a bottom three team for the most part. Defensively now with Giannis moving to the Heat, I think, hot take here, that they can not only be one of the best defensive teams in the league, but one of the best defensive teams ever in StatCast history. With the two defensive anchors in Bam Adebayo, who has been an all-NBA defender over the past couple of seasons, which is why he's been paid the way he's been paid. You bring in Giannis, who is still an excellent block-to-block rim defender as well. Bam can get it done on the perimeter and on the block against, more athletic forwards. But also you have Andrew Wiggins, was an elite defender in his prime. Davion Mitchell, who is who got his minutes in the league from his stellar defense. And his game continued to develop from there. So the Miami Heat sent back to Milwaukee Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, and a plethora of picks and swaps. And I think this is an elite deal for Miami in terms of getting two guys together that can play some elite defense. And then if they have some young guys coming off the bench, guards and forwards, that can help create pace, which is what they've been playing with like they were last season, boy, this Miami Heat team can be scary. It's going to be somewhat to the effect of what we saw the New York Knicks were doing, being scared to drive and get into the paint against a guy like with Victor Wembanyama. I feel like these two roaming the blocks will have the same effect. Absolutely. Giannis is still in the back of his end of his prime and can dominate both ends of the floor. And we saw with Bam Adebayo, although against the Wizards, can put up 83 points. Guy can still ball on the offensive end, and we already know what he can do on the defensive end. So you put that together, although Norman Powell was announced today that he's leaving for the Chicago Bulls on a 2-year deal. You got to go get some shooters now for Miami. You got to build this bench, hopefully with some young guys who can run and shoot. The starting five is going to take care of you defensively, and you got to have some young guys who can run, shoot, and possibly defend. A nice backup center would do them well, and a few shooters off the bench who can run and gun. They're definitely going to have to need another ball handler and point guard coming off the bench as well. But as it starts, Miami is looking like a new top contender in the Eastern Conference. Shout out to them. Also, The tool-up in the Western Conference continues with LaMelo Ball now going to Minnesota. But before that, they sent Julius Randle to the Knicks and a three-way deal. I'm sorry, to the Nets and a three-way deal that ultimately sent Nick Claxton to Chicago and Julius Randle to the Nets. Now, for the Nets, you're just scraping for talent. You really just want to try to just get better and not be a bottom feeder. You want to try to acquire some veteran assets to help get you off the tank train. But for Minnesota, it cleared the way for them to bring in LaMelo Ball to pair up with the great Anthony Edwards. Now he won't be seeing a double team as soon as he walks into the gym, because as soon as LaMelo gets hot from three, the focus is going to be on him as well. Now they traded Naz Reid also back to the Hornets, which gives them a great shooter and defensive player moving forward and veteran to help lead that young team. But as far as the Timberwolves go, it's going to be run and gun. You still have your defensive presence in the middle with Gobert, but a show is about to be held in Minnesota. They may be getting up a record amount of threes between the two guards, and the new era of the Splash Bros, I believe, begins in Minnesota. You got two guys with a very high shooting prowess from the three-point range, in Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. The only thing that's going to hinder them now is the serious of LaMelo Ball, and will he be able to play 60-plus games? His health has hindered him over the last few seasons, but we shall see. I honestly think this will be a great turnaround for them. And for Charlotte fans, I know that they had just had their best season that they probably had in over a decade, and they're asking why blow it up now, and you trading away your young superstar. Unfortunately, last season may have been a fluke. You got to remember, guys, last year the Hornets won maybe I think 80 to 85% of the last 40 games. They got extremely hot over the second half of the season and made a push to the play-in. You can't expect them to duplicate that success with the way it's currently built. You had Con Knippel shooting a record amount of threes and making them, and also Brandon Miller, who's been struggling with injuries himself on and off the court, finally played a good amount of games as well. So I don't expect them to duplicate that success. They were probably going to be a bottom feeder team once again. And they traded LaMelo Ball when his value was at his highest. And they got back a good deal and picks in the trade. And that ultimately opens up some leeway and some cap space and some draft picks for them to help rebuild around Conkin Nipple and Brandon Miller moving forward. So Charlotte, I understand, hold on, but you still got a few more years to go till we finally see the ultimate form of this new team building moving forward. But as for the Timberwolves, I expect them to make another run to the Western Conference Finals and at least compete for a championship once again, bringing in LaMelo Ball as long as he can stay healthy for them. Now, John Morant was traded to Portland for Jeremy Grant and another guard whose name is escaping me at the moment. I believe Murray. This deal feels like trading snacks in the lunch line to me. I'll take your Sprite and Skittles and Snickers for your juice, soda, chips, and candy bar. You're exchanging scraps for scraps, it feels like. Because most GMs around the league were not touching John Morant unless the Memphis Grizzlies attached a first-round pick to it, which seems asinine compared to where John Morant started from. Second overall pick, new superstar and face of the franchise, but his value continued to diminish over the years. One, because his health. Two, because he could never keep his weapon holstered whenever a camera was around. Now, moving forward for Portland, you can't expect much from them with their new ownership. Keeping out on the coach, signing a one-year deal well below market value for a coach with a team option of a second or third year. You bring back Damian Lillard, who's been the face of your franchise for over a decade, almost a decade, and you're bringing him back because that's home for him after it didn't work in Milwaukee and he tore his knee. So now you got three guards to play with, and you hope that Damian Lillard can help develop the seriousness and the playing style of a guy like Scoot Henderson and John Morant. You still have Kling in there. You still have some other shooters around him, but it's not going to look, you got a brand new head coach. It's not going to look good. even if Dame goes crazy again, you're still looking at a 35 to 37 win ball club at best, especially in the Western Conference. And as for Memphis, the rebuild begins because you weren't really that good, even with John Morant, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, all guys that you were going to have to pay over $200 million, unfortunately. And they just weren't worth it as a collective. So it's back to the tank train for Memphis. And of course, the biggest deal of the week right now is Kawhi Leonard going from the Los Angeles Clippers back to Toronto, where he won an NBA championship in 2019. I know the city of Toronto is ecstatic to have their beloved Kawhi Leonard back in action for the Raptors. Now, as for the Clippers, they were expected to give Kawhi Leonard an extension to stay there and to show their love for him in order to keep him there. So the way Steve Ballmer is moving, the owner there of the Clippers, it's looking like they want to go in a different direction, which they did. First of all, you had him caught up with a rumor, allegedly, paying Kawhi in different ways in sponsorships a no-work contract for like $18 million in order to subsidize his current contract, which is completely illegal in the NBA CBA deal. So you move on from that. You try to rebuild. You bring in some young guys who can get it done for you in Brandon Ingram and Grady Dick. And you try to be competitive and work around those guys, which you can be. But if I'm the Clippers, you're just looking to put butts in seats as of right now because you got this brand new arena. But you're trying to put butts in seats and continue to keep this fan base's hope alive while you search for your new superstar or multiple superstars to help make you competitive again. But as for Kawhi in Toronto, instantly makes them a contender in the Eastern Conference. Him teaming up with Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, it gives you a pretty good defensive trio that's going to help shut down perimeter and low post players. Toronto will be up there, I believe, in the defensive category along with the Miami Heat at the top of the league when it's all said and done next season. But Toronto bringing in Kawhi not only gives you the star power that you need to move forward and that you were looking for, because again, Toronto is not a free agent city that people that are running to sign with, even if you can break the bank for them. Subsequently, just like Washington that I explained with Trae Young in my last video. So that's why Toronto had initially brought in Brandon Ingram, gave him an extension, because that's the only way they were going to get a guy of his caliber. So now that the deal is done with Los Angeles and Kawhi, why not bring him back and try to make another run at the title? He's already played here. He's won here. Why not do it again? And it was a no-brainer move for the Toronto Raptors. And I think it instantly makes them a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, for sure. Now, in some somewhat not surprising news, to be honest with you, LeBron James has told the Lakers that he will not be returning, which was kind of implied with the way that the Lakers were moving. They just didn't want to say the quiet part out loud and make it seem like they were trying to move on from LeBron, and he decided that he was going to move on. Well, if you're not going to get a $50 million 1-year deal from the team, when they can use that money like they've had today, which I'll get into, to spread across multiple contracts and help fill out the rest of this roster, you're not handcuffed by this 42-year-old megastar. So what's next for LeBron James? It's left to be seen. And honestly, you have to ask yourself, what does LeBron really want out of the end of his career? You're now going to be switching teams again for the 5th time, 6th time really. And what is your goal? You're already on paper a billionaire, worth well over $1 billion. You've made almost $600 million just from playing in the NBA. So money is not the option you would think, but word came out from Rich Paul, LeBron James' agent, is that he would not be taking a pay cut this year. Obviously so. He's earned every bit of money that he can ask for, considering his resume and what he had to do last year, leading the Lakers with no Austin Reeves and no Luka for a bulk of the season. So if money is not what you desire, but also you want to stay competitive and try to compete for a championship, your options now are extremely limited. If you do not want to take a pay cut, because if you want to get paid, you're going to have to go to a team like Chicago or Brooklyn, or dare I say the Wizards, who have somewhat open cap space to pay you maximum money, but those teams aren't competitive right now. There's rumors of him teaming up with Steph Curry in the Bay, but also LeBron wants to be wooed and recruited because he ultimately didn't get that chance when he was coming out of high school. So every time he hits free agency, that seems to be his MO as well, as a sweetener. So I don't really know what's next for LeBron. It's hard to read into his mind of what he wants to really get into. So if chasing it obviously is over the last 3 years, championships hasn't been a priority for LeBron James, because coming into each season last year, we knew the Lakers, last 3 seasons, we knew the Lakers didn't have a championship roster. We knew that. And LeBron, Luka, and others helped take them probably farther than what we expected. So if you decide to go to Cleveland or go to the Bay and team up with Steph Curry, because we saw Draymond opt out of his contract to give the Warriors more flexibility to help try to bring in LeBron. And now rumors are they want to team those 3 guys, LeBron, Curry, and Green, and trade out Jimmy Butler to bring in Anthony Davis to make one last run at a title with those 4 old guys together. I don't see that happening, because right now the Washington Wizards are not trying to trade Anthony Davis, who they just got. For whatever reason, he does not want to play in Washington. But you're under contract, and you're demanding a max contract, Anthony Davis, that is, undeservingly so. You haven't played over 55 games in the last 3 seasons. And to demand a max contract just because you're playing in an undesirable location honestly seems preposterous in my book. We've traded for you. You weren't wanted in Dallas, and you weren't wanted in Los Angeles because they thought that they could get somebody better that's in Luka Doncic. So right now, teams are playing hot potato with your rights, and it doesn't look good on your resume moving forward to the back end of your career. Now, if I'm Anthony Davis, you got to show up and hoop. You do have, I think, this year and then a player option remaining on your contract. So I understand that you can negotiate for a max contract, but if I'm the Wizards, I'd probably give it to him not on the 4-year level, but on the 2-year level. So that gives you this year and another year of guaranteed money, and then a team option on that. Because if I'm giving you a max contract, I'm not giving you the right to opt in on us, and you haven't played but 40 games in 2 years, which could ultimately happen with his health history. But back to LeBron. We don't know what he wants, what's on his mind. We can only go off what they've been leaking to the media and telling us, which is that he doesn't want to play for less, and he still wants to be competitive. And I hate to say it, but I think it's time for LeBron James to finally walk away from the game of basketball. What more can you contribute to this game? You're already the all-time leading scorer and the best player in most people's hearts ever. What else do you have left to prove? You've played with your son and raised him into the NBA. Nobody has done the things that you have done in this league. Why ruin that by going to play for, Dallas or something, some random team? Why ruin that on the back end of your career? Obviously, can still play, but you have other interests outside of basketball, LeBron. You're now an avid golfer, a wine connoisseur. You still have your production company. You want to produce television and movies. What's wrong with moving on and letting go from that? And then that way you get to retire while you still have your legs under you, and you don't have to be dragged off the floor where it looks bad and you're old and you're beat up and you can't even make a jump shot anymore. Why even get to that point in the NBA? I don't think we want to see you like that. I don't think you want to see yourself like that. I digress. What's next for LeBron? We don't know. I don't think he knows. So we'll see. Got to play the waiting game. All right, man. Some great free agency signings. Honestly, this free agency class this year, a little bit weaker than most. There's no really big superstar chase that many teams are looking forward to in this offseason, which is why we had the plethora of trades of superstar and all-stars in this, what I like to call carousel, round and round. So some free agencies that went by. Walker Kessler was kind of the big move today for the Lakers in a nice sign and trade deal with Utah. And they give him a max $130 million deal over the next over the course of 4 years. The Rockets, my Rockets, man, finally did something, okay? We go out and sign Marcus Smart from the Lakers, who's an excellent guard and an all-NBA defender in his peak, and a former defensive player of the year. And also bring in some more shooting with Bojan Bogdanovic. So I'm excited for that. And that just further proves that a 35-year-old Fred VanVleet is not going to change this team, him coming back. So you bring in some more veteran leadership, locker room presence, and Marcus Smart, and a guy that can keep the team around him going from a headspace, because obviously KD hasn't been the leader that we need him to be for this young team. That's never been his strong point, but he's still playing at an all-NBA level because he was all-NBA second team last year. We could continue to put that together along with Şengün, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, and others playing well around him, can still make some noise in this Western Conference. But also we're still waiting on the likes of guys like a Jaren Duran, who was a restricted free agent but had an awful showing in this playoffs. I mean, his numbers didn't increase, but they dropped significantly here in the playoffs. Although his talents are being sought after by some teams, I don't think Detroit breaks the bank to bring him back. Now, if he ultimately goes out and get another deal from somewhere else, Sacramento, Charlotte, other teams that are looking for a big man and gets a mega deal, I do believe that Detroit will match it. But ultimately, I think that they are within their rights to pay him what they're offering, considering how he showed up in the playoffs. You can't just come out on your contract year, ball out, make the All-Star team, and then not do anything in the playoffs and still expect a max contract. Now, if they'd have made the Eastern Conference Finals and he had elevated his game, I think he was averaging 19 and 10 or something like that. If he'd have been averaging 22 and 12 in the playoffs instead of the 8 and 6 that he was averaging or something like that, and getting benched in fourth quarters of games, I don't think the Detroit would have minded at all breaking the bank and paying him a max contract. You have to elevate your game when the time is needed, and that is deep in these playoff games. Except he did the opposite. He failed and flailed. So it'll be interesting to see. They did acquire Isaiah Joe, that is Detroit, but they still have some work to do, man. They got to build out this bench and get a little bit deeper. They got to get somebody to help take some scoring pressure off of Cade Cunningham. And we'll see moving forward what Detroit does. But I just think they caught lightning in a bottle this year by being the number 1 seed in the East, Tatum being out, 76ers struggling with their health issues, and of course the Knicks emerging as well. Now the East has been reshuffled a little bit with Kawhi coming to Toronto. Orlando will be back as well. They'll be pretty good. I think they'll be healthier this year. 76ers can still do some damage if Embiid decides to put together a season. And we still don't know what's going on with Jaylen Brown. After you put his name in the trade conversations with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and his attitude and emotions show you that he is not willing to return, or at least be peaceful with his return. And it seems like his days in Boston are over. Now it's about finding the right deal and getting his worth back in return. But if you're Boston and you offer him up for Giannis, you have to make sure that that deal gets through. And it just wasn't enough to send Jaylen Brown and a first-round pick to Milwaukee for Giannis. It just wasn't enough. Whereas Miami offered, several young talented players plus a plethora of picks and swaps, which ultimately was enough to get the deal done. So if you're Brad Stevens, GM for the Boston Celtics, you now might have to take a slightly undercutting deal for your Finals MVP and superstar, Jaylen Brown, in order to keep the locker room morale at peace. So this is kind of one of my favorite times of the year, where we see people changing teams and we get to predict and get all the outlooks of what it might look like next season. But we have to figure out if any of these moves are going to be successful. Because right now, the Knicks are still the reigning NBA champions and are going to be celebrating on their high horses for the next 12 months. They did lose Mitchell Robinson to Boston today, their backup center, so I know they'll be on the hunt for that, to fill that void. But for the most part, they're bringing everyone back. And right now, they are still the team to beat in the NBA. So, folks, let me know what was your favorite move of the offseason so far in the NBA. July 4th weekend is coming up. I promise to talk some baseball since we've got the All-Star game coming up in a week or two. That's really kind of like not little more than the halfway point in the MLB season. I don't really get to lock in on baseball till June and July anyways, because NBA and no NFL is on. So I lock in for that. I'm going to talk baseball. I know you guys will be excited for that. My Yankees are on a losing streak right now, which sucks. But we're going to eventually get it together. Hopefully, Judge will be back sooner rather than later. Stanton's on his way back. All a bunch of good. Max Fried on his way back as well. So hopefully that'll help get us back on the straight and narrow. Yeah. So comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all the views. Make sure you repost, help get this in front of somebody else that would help me out a bunch. And you guys let me know in the comments what your favorite move is so far in NBA free agency in this superstar carousel. And I'll holler at you guys next time. Peace.